Hello everyone, this is Srikanti, and today we are going to be talking about understanding the socio-cultural learning. And this video's topic will be a little disturbing, so just a heads up. And yeah, let's get started. So today we are diving into the socio-cultural learning, which is a very powerful psychological and sociological concept that helps us understand how we come to view the world that the way that we do. So, from the moment we are born, we begin observing cues from our environment. Through observation, imitation, and interaction, we unconsciously take in the values, behaviors, and expectations of the people around us, starting with our families and gradually extending to our culture, school, community, media, and even friends. So, this learning forms the core of our identity, is which is what we see as normal and what we think is right or wrong, and how we express our emotions and even how we greet one another. So these aren't the things that we consciously choose at first. They are actually observed through the repetition and modeling. We rarely realize how much of what we believe is shaped by the culture around us. For example, something as simple as a greeting like this can carry significant cultural weight. So, in an Arab country, which is Kuwait, using the left hand to greet or offer something is considered respectful due to religious and cultural norms. But in contrast, in the UK or the United Kingdom, a handshake, regardless of which hand, I mean, they don't even care which hand they use, is standard, but what really matters is the eye contact and giving a firm grip. Now, these small gestures reflect the deep rooted cultural values like respect, cleanliness, hierarchy, or formality. Now, understanding these differences isn't just about being polite. It's about developing empathy and tolerance. When we recognize that people aren't being weird or rude, but simply expressing what the culture taught them, we reduce the prejudice and open the door to more meaningful relationships. So, you can ask yourself these questions: what values have I absorbed from my culture or family? Second question: are there any assumptions that I make that might not apply in other cultural settings? Third question: how can I approach cultural differences with curiosity instead of judgment? And yeah, but by being aware of how sociocultural learning shapes us, we are like better equipped to navigate an increasingly diverse world, not just by knowledge, but also by understanding and compassion. Now that we have looked at how we observe the cultural norms, let's zoom in on a specific process that helps explain this. Socialization. So, socialization is the lifelong process through which we learn by the behaviors, values, norms that our society expects of us. It's not something we consciously sign up for it. It begins from the moment that we are born, and the very first teacher that we have is our family. So think about this. Before we can even talk, we are already picking up cues from the people around us. We notice how they speak, how they handle emotions, how they greet each other, and how they solve problems. Now, these patterns get internalized and shaped with how we interact with the world. For instance, if a child grows up in a family that values independence, they likely learn to take the initiative. If emotional expression is discouraged, they may grow up believing that vulnerability is a weakness. So much of our emotional wiring happens early on through unconscious learning. But but basically family is just the starting point. Culture also plays a huge role too. Every culture has its own script, kind of, like what's considered being polite or what's seen as disrespectful, and what emotions can be shown or how. So take greetings as an example again. So in some cultures a bow shows respect, in others a handshake is standard. Some cultures value eye contact as a sign of confidence, while others may see it as rude or aggressive. Now, these differences may be small, but they reflect the deep cultural values and expectations. So the key message here is this. So understanding socialization helps us become more self-aware. When we realize that our behaviors and assumptions aren't universal but culturally shaped, we gain insight into ourselves and into others. It helps us let go of quick judgments and approach differences with curiosity and empathy. So on this slide, we are diving into the two levels of culture that shape how we think, feel, and behave, which are deep culture and surface culture. So let us start with surface culture. So these are the things that we usually notice first when we encounter a new culture. Things like food, clothing, festivals, language, music, and gestures. Now, they're visible, they're tangible, and also what people use to describe a culture at a glance. For example, we might associate Japanese culture with sushi, kimonos, or Boeing. But while these elements are important and interesting, they only scratch the surface. Now, here's where it gets really meaningful, which is the deep culture. So, this is the layer that lies underneath the surface. So, it includes the unspoken values, beliefs, communication styles, and assumptions that people grow up with, and often take for granted. These are things like what can be considered as respectful or disrespectful. How do people express disagreement, or what roles do age, gender, or authority play, and what does success look like in that culture? For example, in some cultures, speaking directly is a sign of honesty. In others, it may be seen as rude or confrontational. Now, these differences can often go unnoticed until there's a misunderstanding. That is because deep culture is invisible, but it is also the most powerful. So it basically shapes the behavior, the social expectations, and relationships. So, when we interact across cultures, we might navigate surface culture with ease, but run into confusion when we hit when we hit these deeper norms. So that's why developing cultural awareness and sensitivity is very important. It helps us move beyond these stereotypes and into the true understanding. Now we are going to compare two major cultural frameworks that influence how people see themselves and their responsibilities in the world, which are collectivism and individualism. So let us start with the collectivist cultures, which are more common in the many tribal, like Asian, African, and Latin American communities. So in these cultures, the group comes first. They have a strong emphasis on family, community, and shared responsibility. Now, decisions are often made with the well being of the group in mind and not just the individual. In collectivist cultures, helping others and maintaining harmony are seen as essential values. For example, if someone in a collectivist community is struggling, others will naturally step in to help because the success and stability are viewed as shared outcomes. Now, this builds trust, loyalty, independence, which can be very emotionally supportive. But on the flip side, it can also place a lot of pressures on the individuals to conform or sacrifice personal needs for the group. Now, contrastingly with the individualism cultures, which are more common in the Western countries like the US, Canada, and much of the Europe. So, these cultures emphasize personal responsibility, independence, and achievement. People are encouraged to pursue their own goals and define their own path in life. Um, this fosters the innovation, self-confidence, and the freedom of choice. But it can also lead to isolation, loneliness, and also a sense of disconnection from the community. Now, neither of the topics that I've talked about are perfect, but because collectivism can sometimes limit personal expression, which while the individualism can neglect the emotional and social needs. Now, the key is to understand how each worldview shapes communication, values, and behavior, and recognizing that both offer strengths and challenges. Now, let us talk about that something that is incredibly important but also can feel very uncomfortable to talk about, which is personally for me to talk about this topic, which are cultural controversies. So, each culture is built on on a set of values and traditions that feel completely normal but to the people within it. But the moment we step outside of our own culture or even engage with someone from a different background, we begin to see that these norms are not universal. In fact, they can be either shocking or difficult to understand. Like, take the topics like marriage customs, gender roles, or family structures. In some cultures, arranged marriages are seen as a respectful and a more practical approach to unite the families, but in others, the idea may seem outdated or oppressive. Now, some cultures emphasize that collective family decision making, while the others prioritize individual choice and independence. Similarly, traditional gender roles can be seen as deeply respected in one setting and strongly challenged in the other, in another. Now, these differences can lead to clashes, especially in a multicultural societies where people live side by side but may not share all the same values. Without understanding these differences can cause judgment, resentment, or misunderstanding. But again, here's the key point. Now, cultural controversies aren't just about being what is right or wrong. They're about deeply rooted beliefs that shape the people's identities. Now, when we rush to criticize or reject another practices without understanding the why behind them, we miss an opportunity to build empathy and connection. So, as learners, our goal isn't to agree with every cultural practice, obviously, but to understand the context behind it. So, that kind of understanding can give us tools to engage in meaningful dialogue, promote tolerance, and also reduce the prejudice. So, let us ask ourselves these questions. Have I ever judged a cultural practice without really knowing its background? How can I remain open minded when I encounter values that differ from my own? And what does it look like to challenge a harmful practice while still respecting someone's cultural identity? So, by exploring these controversial topics like respectfully and thoughtfully, we build the cultural intelligence, and that is important for navigating to our interconnected world. So now we're entering a part of a discussion that is again all of these slides are important, but this is just more of like a recap in a way. But this is also important. So I will be honest. This is again a little uncomfortable. So I think these are the same slide as the cultural controversies. But let's see. So every single one of us grows up in a surrounded by a set of beliefs, habits, and expectations that may feel completely normal to us, um, and they're so familiar that we often don't question them. But as soon as we encounter a different culture, whether it's through travel, friendships, or even social media, we realize, oh wow, not everyone in the world sees the same way, and sometimes those differences can be surprising and or it can also be challenging. um I think that this is the same slide as the previous one, so we'll just move on to the recap. So now let us take a moment to really reflect on how deeply culture shapes the way that we see, especially in areas like education, individualism, and collectivism. So think about the education first. In some cultures, education is seen as a pathway to personal freedom and self-expression. Students are encouraged to question, to explore their own ideas, and pursue learning based on curiosity. While in the others, education is is viewed more as a collective responsibility. Like it's a way to honor family, contribute to society, and uphold the tradition. Now, neither of these approaches are wrong. They just simply reflect the different cultural values. Now, The same contrast shows up in how we think about individualism and collectivism. In individualistic cultures, success is often measured by personal achievement, standing out and being unique and taking initiative. But in the collectivist cultures, success might be defined by how well you support your group, like your family or your community and your workplace. Now, values like harmony, duty, and cooperation comes first. now, why does all of this matter? Because understanding these differences helps us move from judgment to appreciation. When we understand that someone's actions come from a different cultural lens, not from like rudeness or like ignorance, we are more likely to respond with empathy rather than the frustration. So in today's global world, whether you're working on a team, making friends across cultures, sorry, and simply scrolling through social media, cultural understanding is it's a superpower. So it allows you to connect more deeply, communicate more respectfully, and see situations from many point of views. So as we continue exploring these themes, I want you to stay curious and ask yourselves these questions again. Um, where did my beliefs about success, respect, and or education come from? How might someone else's background shape their actions in ways I hadn't considered? And so because at the heart of this conversation is one powerful idea. When we take time to understand others, we not only become better communicators, we become more compassionate human beings. And so yeah, that's basically the end of this video. And thank you for watching and have a nice day. Bye.